Redditors who have ever hired homeless people with the "will work for food" signs, what was your experience like? One super cold night over Christmas break a couple years back, my roommates and I were walking to Taco Bell and saw a homeless man laying in the parking lot. He had a cheap, thin blanket, so we bought him some food and asked him if he wanted to spend the night inside, and he came back and stayed at our house. Via Facebook, we helped him find his daughter who he hadn't spoken to in a couple years, and he was able to wish her a Merry Christmas. I spent the night worrying that he would steal everything in the house. When I woke up, the blankets were neatly folded up and he had left us 2 pairs of socks and some deodorant. A week later, we came home to find that someone had raked all of our leaves for us. Haven't seen him since, but I hope he is well. 10/10 would do again. You probably showed him the only love he's felt in a long time. In college I got my fraternity to hire a homeless guy I always talked to do security for our parties. I went to college in a pretty crappy city, and my fraternity never turned people away from out parties, so we sometimes had to worry about gang members wandering in. I actually met a former Latin king who was pretty cool. The school wouldn't provide security since it could be seen as them condoning underage drinking, so I suggested we hire this homeless guy I knew who was always at my to Munchie's gas station because he had actually helped me out when I almost got mugged once and knew a lot of the less than savory characters. We told him we just needed him to let us know if there was anyone he knew might cause a problem. Dude was more professional than most bouncers at the bars I've been to. He made everyone that wasn't obviously a student show their necks and wrists for gang tattoos and ran a tight freaking ship. Our president ended up getting him a bouncer job at club downtown. This is a cool freaking story. Hope he's doing well today. I was homeless for 4 years 15-19. One day I applied for a security guard job at the local hospital for a joke, was punkish at the time. When I showed up, I almost scared the guy off, but he shook it off and asked me to stay for the interview. For the first half hour, he asked me questions one would ask any applicants. After he finished, he looked at me and asked me my story. We sat and talked for close to 2 hours. I got my stuff and was preparing to leave when he came up and told me, "Cut your hair, take off the piercings and be here on Wednesday. You look like a guy that could use a chance in life." I went back to my hole that night and thought things through. It was the 16th of August 2001. I've been drug free and off the streets ever since. Sometimes all we need in life is a chance to prove ourselves. This response alone makes me happy I came to this thread. I ran into a high school classmate a while back. I've posted this before but it bears repeating. A guy in high school just didn't like me and I him. We got into a big dang fight. He broke my nose and I knocked a couple of his teeth out, off campus. No police were involved, but about 10 years later I saw him sleeping on the street near where I worked. I woke him up and asked him what was going on. He told me about his life after high school. He knocked up his girlfriend. Her parents made them get married, divorce a year later. He got into drugs and ended up alienating everyone. I asked him if he was still using and he said no. He couldn't buy a dose anyway. I felt bad for him, so I asked if he'd like to stay in my guest house, a 1-room cottage, set up like an efficiency apartment, for a while. He took me up on it and got a night's sleep in an actual bed for the first time in years, his words. I bought him some clothes and fed him for about a month until I found him a job with a contractor I was doing some work for. Long story short, it's been 6 years. He now owns a contracting business, has a wife and a new baby boy, and just bought the house down the street from me. He worked his ass off for us putting up a fence. We paid him cash. He earned it, was a recent parolee and was having a hard time finding honest pay. A sad reality for many ex-cons, unfortunately. I once picked up a hitchhiker that was trying to get from Washington to New Mexico when I was camping in Yellowstone. He had family in New Mexico that offered to help him and had a good job lined up, he just had to get there. So we picked him up and took him back to Colorado with us. He stayed on our couch for a week or two and picked up our mess and took care of maintenance I grossly neglected. My roommates and I were in college at the time and partied 3-4 days a week, so you can imagine the mess. The little money he would get from doing odd jobs for neighbors and such, he would buy food and beer for all of us. One day I had an errand to run about 50 miles closer to his destination but still 300 plus miles from where he needed to be. He came with me and when he got out of the car handed me a letter and said don't read it until I get home, then walked through a field straight towards the Rocky Mountains. When I got home we all read the letter and it is the kindest set of words I've ever received. About a month later we get a call from an area code I don't recognize. It was him. He made it and called us on his first payday at his new gig. He also told us about the remainder of his journey. Turns out he walked and camped a large portion of the way back. I have since moved multiple times and have grown up a bit. He's still welcome back whenever he wants though. I hope all is well, Freddy. I've never hired a homeless man with a sign. I have been a homeless man but I was missing a sign. I approached homeowners for doing some yard work. I was very happy with the pay I got. It was more than zero, which was more than I had. I recall one employer paying me $80 for only an hour of work. I guess he assumed it would take me several hours. I'm fast. I was referred to his friends after that and was able to rent a home and get myself in a better situation sometime after. I was 19 at the time. We've hired hundreds of them over the last 20 years mainly because I'm lazy and I can make more money with my time doing what I do. The only really memorable one was Taven. Taven stopped me in our parking lot one Friday morning and said he needed some work and he was willing to do whatever we had. Just the day before I'd gotten a notice from the city saying the bamboo on our backlot was getting out of hand and we needed to get rid of it. It's a little over an acre and if you've ever seen how bamboo grows there were thousands of 20 feet stalks. Told him I'd give him $100 to do it. Gave him a machete and figured I'd never see him or the machete again. Over the course of the day he cut every dang piece of the bamboo down and had them laid in a couple of huge piles. Paid him his money, thanked him, and told him I'd get my guys to haul it to the dump Monday. He asked me if he could have the big pieces first and I gladly let him. Came back in Monday morning and he was back in the lot helping somebody load a monster-sized load of bamboo onto a trailer. He'd spent the weekend cutting all the branches off and trimming it into 6 feet long sections and was selling them all for $350 to a local plant nursery he'd done day labor work for in the past. We talked about it for a few minutes after the truck left and he just kept smiling and saying there was a hustle in everything. You just had to find it. So you get a notice about removing the bamboo. Then a day later Taven shows up looking for work. I think you got hustled more than you realized. When I was poor, living in my first apartment, there was a homeless woman who hung around outside my apartment complex. She always hit me up for cash or cigarettes, and it started getting awkward. I was always broke and barely keeping a roof over my own head, so seeing her and being unable to help most days made me feel bad. I finally just told her, look, I'm barely scraping by. I'm sorry to say no so often, but I'm eating Pringles for dinner this week, and I really can't help. If I ever have something extra, you can have it. Just please stop asking. When I saw her the next morning on my way out she said, looking good, girl. When I got home from work, she said, go on, kick your feet up. You've had a long day. I gave her a cigarette. Every morning, she said something nice or inspirational, and every evening, she told me I'd earned some R&R. Because she was so nice, I always tried to find something I could part with. Loose change, clothes I would otherwise donate, leftovers. It turned into a really nice, symbiotic relationship, and I missed her when she moved on. I hired a guy to shovel my snow, gave him some food and shelter because it was cold, realized he took $300 from my jacket. What an experience. In Chile, my father and I parked in a sketchy neighborhood when we went to visit some family. Dad sees a homeless guy and gives him $5 and tells him to watch our car. Later, when we're walking back to our car, we see some guy trying to take our windshield wipers. My dad's about to yell something when our homeless guy comes running like a bum out of heck, punches the guy in the back of the head and guy runs off. Homeless dude chases after him but my dad tells him to calm down. Dad gives him some extra cash and we have dinner with him. 10/10 would hire again. Hep, bum out of heck. I worked at a steak and shake as a waitress on the graveyard shift throughout college. Weirdest freaking place I ever worked. It was right off the interstate and we got the strangest people in around 3 AM every night. Anyway, my manager was a really nice guy and one day saw a homeless lady crying outside. She said she had ridden her bike for like 10 miles to get to an interview at the hotel next door, and when the hotel manager realized she was homeless he basically told her to GTFO and didn't even bother interviewing her. She was so distressed that she just sat down and cried, and my manager saw her while he was taking out the garbage and asked if she was okay. After hearing her story he hired her as a cook, and she was seriously the hardest working person we had in the entire restaurant. She would take any shift and was never late, and never complained. She was pretty rough around the edges and missing most of her teeth, and I don't know if she could have actually had a job where she had to interact one-on-one with the customers, but I'll be damned if she wasn't an awesome line cook. I left that job shortly thereafter again, weirdest place I ever worked, so I don't know what happened to her. I hope she saved up enough to be able to afford housing, because she was really trying to turn her life around. I am currently homeless, and I don't look it because there are tons of resources in the city I am located. I walked 11 miles one day just to get an interview. Wasn't even an interview, was him telling me if he will call me again. Let's hope he calls me. I had a big resume, and I sent an email after saying thank you for the interview. I tried once, really just wanted my lawn mowed. Told the guy I'd cook him a meal if he mowed my lawn. All I got was a frick you. He was literally holding a sign that said "Will work for food." Maybe he really was just looking for money. Maybe because I was 19 at the time he thought I was messing with him. I guess I'll never know. He worked 5 times harder than the high school kids I hired on the crew. I hired him for a few jobs over the span of a few months, but the next season he wasn't around, so I hope that means he got off the street. Unsure if he was homeless, but a young man on a bike asked to paint the number on my curb for a donation. I was noticing that it was illegible just the other day, so made sense to have it done. He'd done my neighbor's house, and it looked good enough, so I said yes. We chatted a bit. He said he'd been laid off and couldn't find work. I ended up giving him $10 for about 10 minutes work. He did a really nice job. 2 cans of paint, a pack of number stencils, and his positive attitude was a good investment on his part. My parents have a house in Florida they rent out. My dad was down there doing repairs to it when a homeless man on a bike stopped by and asked if my dad needed help. Dad decided to hire him. Alton, the homeless man, helped my dad repaint the house, mow the lawn, and cut out all the overgrown plants. When the house wasn't rented and my family was up north, my dad paid Alton to mow the yard and keep an eye on the place. While working with my dad, Alton asked Dad if he could borrow some money to buy some nice pants and shoes for an interview he had for a job. Dad wasn't sure he could trust him yet, so instead my dad took him out to a store and they went shopping together for these items. Alton got the job as a chef and eventually got himself a room in a house with some other guys. Occasionally Alton will ask my dad for some emergency money and he always finds a way to pay it back. I find it interesting that my dad was so open to work with Alton due to him being both black and poor, those being 2 types of people my dad can say judgmental things about. Either way, I'm glad it all worked out for Alton. He was humanized. He was no longer just a person of a certain skin color or economic stratum. He was Alton. It's a lot harder to hate when you realize the object of your hatred is a real, sympathetic person. We could all use more Altons in our lives. Warning. Your computer has been hacked by Dog Anonymous. Send hacking boops and pats or all your data will be deleted. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.